It's always funny seeing some weird, out of place, misinformed topic on the X app, or what I like to call the shit app, where you get all your entertainment and misinformation for free, because that's kind of how that app is fabricated. It's fabricated for farming engagement, as much as people hate those two words. So what am I talking about in particular? Well, everyone knows it by now. If you've been paying attention to interviews and following up with Marvel Spider-Man 2, then you would know that the game had its completion time sort of thrown out in the ether by people who completed it and said it was like 15 to 20 hours. This is not really spoilers. I'm not going to talk about spoiler situations, but Insomniac sort of clarified this themselves, that the game is going to be like 16 to 25 hours. And then other completion times where people 100%ed the game and got platinums, those times were in the 30s. So we're talking like, if you want the whole shebang completed 100%, it's gonna take you 30 hours long to get all that done. There was some interesting opinions that I've seen before, and it was, well, for a $70 game, 15 hours, 25 hours is way too short for a video game. The reason I said I've seen this before is because people were complaining about this hour point with Resident Evil Village, even RE4 Remake, where it's like, oh man, at full MSRP or at $60, man, this game should not be just 16 hours. It needs to be like a 100-hour long RPG filled with filler, boring missions, and nonsense, right? And that's kind of the mentality of some of these people. They believe that in order to get the full bang for your buck, a game needs to be like 100 hours long. And I'm here to say I disagree with that logic. And the reason is because I feel like it depends on the game, right? If you're going to be an RPG or something like that, I expect the time to be at least long. That's fine, but not every game is a role-playing game. Some games are linear, some games are online only, multiplayers. The mileage for your time will vary, but I will say the most important thing to a video game for coming back and saying, oh man, I really feel like I got my money's worth, is the replay value and the fun factor. And I think people kind of forget about that. Like, do I want to sit there and do I want to play a video game for like 100 fucking hours and is boring as piss, in my opinion? Hell no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to waste more of my time if the game is really that long. So, you know, I'm going to be bored throughout the entire experience if the fun factor is not there and the replay value, what makes me come back for more, is not present. That's what I really want from the video game for its value. When am I going to keep coming back? Is there something enthralling to make me come back time in and time out and make me want to play the game over and over again and have fun with it? Like Metal Gear Rising, that game was sold back then for $60 at 6 hours long. And guess what? The game is not shit because it's super fun as fuck, high production value. The character writing is still fun as fuck. You could do insane combat. You had 6 hours of game. Now they added onto it more with the DLC. That was cool, but it was 6 hours long to complete. It had fun replay value, going back and unlocking the suits or getting new swords or upgrading your character. That stuff was fun. I don't like the Ubisoft model where it's like, hey, we're gonna make a game that's like open world, hundreds of checklists on the map, and then all of a sudden it's like I'm just doing the same repetitive tasks over and over and over again, and they're padding the clock. I think that's the worst way to do replay value. I'm sorry, you gotta have some varied nature to your missions like that. Like Red Dead Redemption 2 was great. Every side mission felt like a main mission. When you did side content, it felt like there were stories going on, some weird deranged hillbillies that you had to kill, fun stuff, fun cutscenes, fun notions, everything. I like side content like that where it keeps the player focused and engaged. If the side content is good for Marvel Spider-Man 2, it's going to make me want to do those missions. It's going to make me want to explore the open world. It's going to make me want to be fascinated with the game, because if the fun factor and replay value is there, not only am I coming back to the game frequently, but I'm also deciding to say, hey, I enjoy this combat. I want to experience more layers to it with the death and everything. I want to see how the symbiote operates. I want to see how Miles and Peter works in tandem with the combat. I think that is the greatest thing they could do. Time and quality is very relative to the observer when playing these games, and I mean even buying the game itself, the value is also relative to the observer, and that is something that is paramount to a lot of people, and I totally understand why. But I feel as though even when a deal is broken, let's talk about the controversy for separate ways, where people were like $10 was way too much for 5 to 6 hour DLC that gave you an entirely new character story to play with, and also the fact that you got new unlockables in the process. It's like, what is acceptable to people at certain price points now? Because now it's like $70 is way too high, and now it's like, well, $10 is way too low for DLC content. Like, which fucking argument is it? Is the game going to hit that balance of being just right in the sweet spot for completion time and, of course, fun factor and everything else involved? And I think it's just a matter of entitlement. Now look, there are times where I am also a very, like, I say gaming is a selfish hobby. I know this. I am the most selfish gamer on the planet, but I know when I'm getting my money's worth out of an experience, and I can appreciate the values that they bring to the table if they do bring them to the table. I'm not gonna say that I felt like the first Spider-Man was merely trash, like people say, because, you know, people don't like to be nuanced these days. They want to just say a game is trash and move on. I was nuanced about that game. I said I really enjoyed the main story. Story was dope. The side missions were at best. They could have been a lot better. I didn't like that Peter Parker was like jumping through smog, and that there are collectathons within open world games, and they tell you, oh, this is the most enticing thing ever. It depends on what you do with it, really. And they started to get better with the content when I played Miles Morales, and I was like, okay, well, maybe they'll find their footing when it comes to Spider-Man 2. Every sequel or every enhancement is something that should be an enhancement and not a regression, a step backward. I've also played very long games that you could say is like worth $60 or whatever. You squeeze all your hours out of it. However, quantity does not equal quality, nor will it say a game is going to be good or not. Look at Resident Evil 6, man. I've ranted about that so many times, but Resident Evil 6 is a guilty pleasure game. I do appreciate it being the most feature rich package within the Resident Evil franchise. That's cool. Onslaught, Mercenaries, Survivors, No Mercy Mercenaries, it had a lot of fucking shit in that package. Siege, everything. It was cool. It was kind of awesome, actually. However, when we talk about the campaigns and how there was like such a disparity of quality in the campaigns, where it's like, oh, Leon's campaign is like really good, and then Jake and Ada are not that great. It's like, okay, what are we doing here? We have 4 campaigns, but only 1.5 is really great. Talking about the Chris story as well with Leon's gameplay. It's like, what are we doing here? What are we padding here? Why can't all the campaigns be a high octane thrill ride? You know what I mean? It begs the question the more you play some of these games. And like I said, you can make a quality game and it doesn't matter how long it will be or can be, as long as it could be short and sweet, or it could be a long game and it's totally worth it. right? We've seen games that fit that paradigm. We've seen RPGs that were way long and they were great games. One that comes to mind that I played at least was Grandia. Grandia was a great RPG, and it, you know, the length justified it. I didn't have any problem with the game being long and multiple discs and everything. And then you have the Ubisoft formula where it's like, okay, Wildlands, right? Same shit, and you know, doing some of the same repetitive tasks, or Assassin's Creed where you're like collecting flags. It's like, what are you doing with that content, and is it enjoyable enough to warrant going back and experiencing all of those hours in between? And that's what I ask of a game. I don't mind paying $60 or $70 MSRP if the game is well paced, well structured, good, and the hours will stack up eventually, because if I want to go back and experience it with that replay value involved, and if the game is fun enough to do so, I'm gonna do multiple playthroughs. Like, I do this all the fucking time with Resident Evil. Like, Resident Evil is notorious for being known for being like short in other entries. Like, you have your long entries like Village and Resident Evil 4 Remake, and then you have your shorter ones like RE2, for example, which is not really that long, and RE1, which could be cleared in like 5 or 4 hours, right? But the replay value is there. You got another character. How am I gonna experience that other character story? Well, I gotta complete another character story to do so, or maybe I'll just start off with the other character, right? So it's a lot of things going on under the hood with some of these games that I think people overlook for replay value, for time, for pacing, for quality consistency, and they just worry about quantity because they are very, very concerned with getting the most bang for their buck. And it's not anything wrong with having a notion like that. However, I think you need to look at the right place first before looking at how long a game is and determining if that game is trash just because of it. I think that I can cite so many long games that I wanted to drop from the first hour alone and not continue it anymore because it didn't have that replay value. It didn't have that quality aspect that hooked me in terms of the fun factor. I also guess we can roll the brakes back for like a minute and really think about it, because we can do the same philosophy just on the other side of the coin, right? You can say, I'm not going to pay full MSRP for a $70 game no matter how great it is. Fine, that's your prerogative. Me personally, if the game is good, short and sweet, whatever, and it fucking entices me in, I'm doing like multiple playthroughs, that's fine. At the other side of the coin, it's like, if the game is not sucking me in or enticing me, it's like, why am I playing it if this game is like 100 hours long? When is it going to end? When is it going to stop? Not all games need to be super fucking long. I'm sure it's been said by countless gaming content creators, but it's like, sometimes I want to move on to other games. Sometimes I just want to have the story complete, reach a conclusion, and then move on to the next game finally. While it is good that if a game decides to bring me back to multiple playthroughs with multiple choices, and it has so much fun factor to it that I want to see all these alternate outcomes, I already know that if the game is bad, then I don't want to deal or complete it in full. I just want to be one and done with my playthrough. Some games are meant to be one and dones at times. Some other games are meant to have replay value. Some games are meant to be long. Some games are meant to be short. It is a huge plethora of games out there that has varying prices reaching this ultimate conclusion and results. And I think that's the most important thing. Whatever you think is supposed to be priced at the content, fair enough, but it doesn't dispute if the content is great or not. If it's great, then they could make a game like MGR and put it at like fucking $60, and it will be something that does well. I think that game did well for the price that they sold it at. Same could go for a long game as well, and we've seen varying amounts of successes and failures based on the word of mouth of the game itself and how it got reached out to people within the media or the gamers themselves, or got into their hands, or they said, hey, it's great, hey, this game is trash or whatever, and then it reflected, and then other people made their decision to either buy the game or not. I think that's the most important thing. The contents of the game, the fun factor, and constantly coming back to it, not the length itself, because once again, you can make a long ass, you say, oh, I don't like short games, fuck that. It's like, all right, but I can also say, oh, the game is long as fuck, I don't want to complete it. And there's other people out there that feel the same way, that will present their arguments the same way. How is the structure, and what am I doing in particular, and does this feel personal and relevant and great and fun? And it's like, people look to be immersed in their video games, and I think if the game is doing a very horrible job at it, then I'm gonna want that playthrough to be over. I'm gonna want that to be finished. It doesn't even matter how long or short it is, I want it to end, right? I'm sure Spider-Man is going to be just as fun as the previous one, as from what I've seen of the gameplay previews. Like, all of them have been glowing, and even the leaked previews have said the game is shaping up to be one of Insomniac's best games so far since Up Your Arsenal for Ratchet and Clank. So that's really high praise in my honest opinion. We'll see if that praise pans out when the game comes out October 20th. But that is my opinion on the whole quality and quantity arguments. I love my games with substance, rich stories, cool things to do, great presentation, all that stuff, great voice acting, interesting stories. That's what I look forward to in my video games. You know, cool tactile multiplayer if it's there, not just, oh, I need to bloat the game constantly with the most repetitive missions of all time and blowing up the same courier like 5 times. I think we have evolved past that design, and there's still people that look forward to stuff like that, which more power to them, but I want a little something more out of what I'm paying for $70. This is Renegade Operative signing off. It's all about the substance. I'd rather have all substance, and I don't want to deal with any of the flash being put on top of it. I would prefer that to be out if you're gonna get my honest opinion. I'll see you guys next time, for real. Later.